Well, Dr. Anderson, thank you for sitting down with me.
Tyler, an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
I enjoy the opportunity. So I figure we could start out and get the audience to know who you are, what you're running for. Do you want to explain to us what you're doing with that?
Sure. I'm a mostly retired chiropractor, but my favorite line is I still work my fingers to the bone, the chiropractor. But anyway, I had to retire a little bit early, but at any rate, chiropractic is my profession, or was my profession, and still something very near and dear to my heart. But I've had other interests, activities and stuff over the years. In fact, as I was just saying a minute ago, I used to do a little cable access television program years ago that was intended to help publicize the chiropractic profession and my office, and at the same time have some fun. So
when did you get started in the chiropractor business?
Well, I graduated from Logan College of Chiropractic, now Logan University, in midsummer 1986.
86, okay. When you started out, because today, as far as I know, I'm not in the chiropractor business. As far as I know, it's pretty widely accepted. But sometimes in a particular medical business, there's an acceptance window. Was it really widely accepted when you got into it, or what did it struggle?
No. It has been and is still a bit of a struggle. In his book, The Real Anthony Fauci, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., about 2/3 of the way through the book, cites an incredible fact. He says the #1 blockade against every form of non-drug healing in America for 50 years, including acupuncture, exercise, lifestyle changes, nutrition, and last but not least, chiropractic. The #1 blockade against the use of those non-drug methods of healing for 50 years has been Anthony Fauci, all for the sake of drug sales. And this would make sense because around 1993, a government agency was established that was going to explore remedies for a common illness that costs a lot of money every year, costs the country in terms of gross national product and inability to work for a while. Low back pain, second only to the common cold in terms of its frequency. This organization did research into chiropractic and muscle relaxants, painkillers, the standard medical fare, and physical therapy modalities. Now, in those days, this was before physical therapy had gotten more interested in hands-on stuff like myofascial release, getting muscles to respond with special technique on trigger points, what we call trigger points, and so on. But the conclusion was incredible. At the end of the study, this group, a government entity, came out with a statement that there was nothing close to chiropractic. The muscle relaxants, painkillers, very little long-term help. The physical therapy modalities, E-stim, moist heat, ice, etc., really did very little. It was very expensive Band-Aid. By far and away, the most effective treatment was chiropractic. We were overjoyed. We thought, at last, the U.S. government has acknowledged that what we do has some incredible importance. And yet, months went by. Nothing changed. We still got the typical hassles from Medicare and insurance companies that were always doing stuff that seemed very questionable, putting blocks in the way of payment, just to, lack of a better word, hassle us and maybe restrict what we could do in terms of treatment and frequency and things like that. Because chiropractic, unfortunately, one of the drawbacks is it requires intermittent, continued treatment for a while, at least most of the time. There are instances where you get a real home run case and it happens instantly, but in order to get a good, sustained, and long-term help, you gotta kind of hang in there in a lot of cases. But anyway, nothing seemed to be changing insofar as the treatment of chiropractic by the insurance industry and so on. And so I asked the CEO of our state organization one day, I said, well, what is going on here? I mean, look, we had this incredible study, and yet we're still getting these delays, these hassles that are blocking patients' access to us and stuff. What's going on? And the guy said, well, Dr. Anderson, I have friends in Washington that are pretty sharp, and they say that there is one individual that is at the top of the medical government complex, and he was very unhappy with that study.
Why?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, why?
Yeah, good question. Anyway, the story is that he went to the government agency and said, "You idiots, you did not have my permission to do a study like this or make these kind of statements. You're out of here. Your careers are over." Now, I don't know if that was Anthony Fauci or not, but based on the description of Anthony Fauci and his web of control of the government medical complex, it sure sounds like it. And so I considered that one heck of a good cross-check. That was back in 1993. Now, since that time, it's gotten hard with the social media and everything, and I guess better communication in general. It's much harder for so-called authorities to deny chiropractic and its usefulness in a range of problems. Now, a friend of mine once said he was complimenting me. He said, "But Jerry, you got to realize, not everybody works as hard as you do at this." And I said, "Well, yeah, I guess I worked pretty hard at it, but Tyler, that's because when I was 20 years old, I went to a chiropractor for the first time, and the results for me personally as the patient were absolutely incredible." Now, I tell this story to people, and I know they think I'm exaggerating because it just sounds like it. But what happened, I went into the guy, Dr. Harold Liebergazell in Camden, Tennessee.
You still remember?
Oh, yes. Never forget him. But here's the amazing part. I walked in, and he said, "Well, hey, Jerry, what's wrong? Where are you hurting?" I said, "Well, I'm not really hurting anywhere, Dr. Liebergazell. I have an asthma problem. And I've heard that you guys can take care of certain things without drugs. And I'm afraid that if I have to keep taking asthma medications, it'll restrict my flying. I might not even be able to keep my flight physical. So that's why I'm here." Well, he did the workup, the x-rays, the exam and everything. And report of findings, he showed me my film, and he said, "Well, Jerry, you've got a scoliotic spine here." I said, "What's that?" And he said, "See how it curves, this S-shaped curve in it?" And it qualified. It, as I look back on it, it actually had enough of a curve to literally qualify. It's past 10 degrees, just to make it plain. And he said, this is what's going on." And he said, "Have you ever had a fall that damaged your neck?" I said, "Yeah. I was trying to do tumbling in high school phys ed class, and my neck was stiff for weeks after that." And he said, and I said, "And it still hurts a little bit." And he said, "Well, that's what's going on. You've had altered mechanics there." And he said, "You really need some chiropractic." And now this is the kid, 20-year-old kid, who minutes before had told him, "I'm not really hurting anywhere." Well, when that guy did the first adjustment, I was on the table, he did some leg checks, watched and analyzed what was going on. He put me on my side and did a side posture move that's pretty famous. And I felt my low back release, and I could not believe it. Sounded like a shotgun going off down in my low back, and I thought, "Oh my God, am I going to be able to walk out of here when this guy gets..." It was kind of scary, intimidating, but it felt great. Then he had me face down. He did the standard posterior to anterior push on the thoracic mid-back that needed it. And then, supine, lying on my back, he adjusted my neck. And he did an axial traction move that is a stretch tractioning move that apparently I really was desperately in need of, because when he did that, I felt circulation into my hands and feet, a wave of relaxation through my body. I lay there on the chiropractic table, and I said, "Dr. Liebergazell, can I just lie here for a few minutes? I've never felt this good in my life, and I don't want to move." And I was not kidding. It was unbelievable. Now, I made a mistaken assumption. I assumed that everybody needed it as desperately as I did and would respond as incredibly as I did. Not everybody does. Some lucky people are not that needy for it. But I'm telling you, man, I walked out of that chiropractic office a different human being than the man that walked in. And I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating. I went home thinking, "Man, I can turn my head without pain. The mid-back pain, the pain between my shoulder blades that never goes away, It's gone.
That's got to be an incredible feeling.
It
It's got to be
was.
like those videos you see where people who haven't seen color for years, like get those chroma
Yes.
glasses and can
Yes.
finally see. That's crazy.
It was an epiphany. I went home and slept the best night's sleep I'd ever had. I woke up the next day thinking, man, I wish I could do this. I wish I could be a chiropractor. And sure enough, it's sort of like being bitten by a werewolf or a vampire. The next thing I know, I am one. Actually, it wasn't the next thing. Several years went by. I had to fly airplanes, work in broadcasting. I'll tell you more about that later.
Yeah.
But finally, I thought, I want to do something really meaningful with my life. There were a couple of things, pretty hard-hitting events that made me think I really need to do something along these lines. Now, chiropractic, I was in a job interview with a guy. He said, "You're thinking about going to chiropractic school? That's crazy. You don't want to get in with those quacks. They can't do anything real. They're not real doctors." And I said, "Well, it's not been my experience. I got incredible help." He said, "Yeah, but my belief is if they were really doing anything, insurance companies would gladly cover them, and they don't want to do that."
Because we know how virtuous the insurance companies are, right?
Oh, yes. And I thought, well, God. So some years went by, 3 or 4 or 5 years, and I'm thinking, well, maybe he's right. Maybe he's not right about the effect that chiropractic has, but maybe it'd be so difficult to earn a living because the odds are stacked against us in terms of insurance and everything. But something amazing happened. A chiropractor named Chester Wilk, Dr. Wilk, from Lombard, Illinois area, tried to refer a patient he had never seen. A newcomer walks through his doors, and Dr. Wilk, being the competent and great chiropractor that he was, said, "You don't need to be with me. This needs to be at the emergency room." So he sent this person to the hospital emergency room there near Chicago somewhere, and they refused to see the patient. They said, "No self-respecting medical doctor will have anything to do with a chiropractor or chiropractic patients." Unbelievable. Well, the patient went back to Dr. Wilk, and he was furious.
Yeah.
He called the emergency room. He said, "Where's your Hippocratic oath? You whatever." Anyway, "I sent this person to you, has never been to the chiropractor, didn't lay a hand on him. I sent this person to you because they need to be under emergency care. What is wrong with you people?" Well, anyway, I think the story goes, after 2 or 3 days, they relented and actually saw the patient. But he was furious, and he didn't give up. He had a brother-in-law who was an attorney who said, "Chester, why don't you sue these guys? This is terrible behavior." Well, he did. He was joined by, I think it was 4 other chiropractors in this suit that eventually became known as the Wilk lawsuit, W-I-L-K, Chester Wilk, Dr. Chester Wilk, for anybody that wants to Google it or look for it through other resources. But it is so little known. But anyway, this was around 1976. All of a sudden, the situation began to change. All of a sudden, the AMA was not testifying before Congress about how deadly chiropractors were and how they were a bunch of quacks that need to be put out of business and so on.
So he won the lawsuit, apparently.
He did, but
Okay.
it took 11 years. I was out of chiropractic school, and it was a year after I had graduated, but the Supreme Court heard or entertained the idea of hearing the American Medical Association's appeal and said, "No, your appeal is without merit. No, the ruling of Judge Susan Getzendanner, federal judge, stands."
I never knew that chiropractor, that science ever got to the level of the Supreme Court. I mean, I'm aware today, kind of being a newcomer on the scene, that it has a lot of proponents and then there's some detractors.
Sure.
But I never realized it connected to Dr. Fauci. The Supreme Court has heard arguments on it.
Amazing,
And it's
yes.
this big cultural fight that dates
Yeah.
back to the 70s.
Well, the truth is, Tyler, chiropractors, there are some that I would not go to, just like medical doctors that I would not
Sure.
really want to go to. And there are some that are fabulous doctors. I'm telling you, they're on a level with the best out there, simply because they're just that good.
Yeah.
And they accomplish what they do with a holistic approach, without drugs, but with just some amazing techniques and things that, thank God for them, because I, as the patient myself, needed that so desperately, and so thankful for it. So when I went to school at last, I had this to fall back on. I'd had the personal experience, the epiphany of knowing how desperately a person can need something and not even know it. I mean, for instance, the mid-back pain that never went away, the queasiness in the stomach that never left associated with that. Well, I had learned to live with it because some good medical doctors, not knowing any better, gosh, Dr. Giddens, a great guy, I love the guy, but he said, oh, it's just your nerves. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just your nerves, you know. And one day he told me, chiropractor, that's a bunch of stupid quacks. Don't ever go to one of those stupid quacks. They'll kill you. I wish he had been around. I wish he had lived long enough for me to talk to him about it and square things with him. But the old guy that delivered me and my siblings, Dr. Wilson, Robert W. Wilson, I ran into him in the post office there back in Huntington, where I'm from. And I think I just finished trimester 2. And Dr. Wilson saw me and he said, hey, Jerry, how are you doing? I said, fine, Doc, how are you? And he said, oh, I'm good. He said, you remember that time I set your broken arm? I said, yeah, I do. I said, but was that a Smith or a Colles fracture? Was this displaced up or down? And he said, I don't remember, but why do you ask that? He said, what are you doing now? And I said, well, I kind of hate to tell you this, Dr. Wilson, but I'm going to school to be a chiropractor. I'm going to chiropractic school. And he stunned me. He said, well, that's all right. Just be a good one. That's okay. Just be a good one.
So he was actually okay with it. He didn't believe it was quack.
He approved. But now, in the same time frame, this was around the time I had a friend, Dr. Gordon Turner, in Linden, Tennessee. And Dr. Turner had given me some flight physicals and had nursed me along through some asthma problems I was having. And one day, soon after I had begun chiropractic treatment, this was stunning. I called him up. I was working for one of them. It was not so great a TV station, but nice people. But anyway, I called him up to talk to him that night from work. And he was very approachable and a great guy. But at the end of our conversation, he said, well, hey, Jerry, how are you doing physically? And I said, well, I'm doing good, Doc. Your asthma, are you doing okay with your asthma? I said, yeah, I'm doing really good. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm going to a chiropractor. And he said, a chiropractor? And I said, yeah. He said, now here it comes. I'm thinking he's gonna admonish me about. He says, a chiropractor. He said, well, that's great. I'm really glad to hear that, Jerry. He said, I'll tell you something. A good chiropractor can help a lot of things. A good chiropractor can help a lot of things. But he said, but just make sure you got a good one, because a bad one can hurt you just like a bad MD can hurt you. And I laughed. I said, God, that's great. Then he added, but now, Jerry, I'm going to have to ask a favor of you. I said, well, sure, what is it? He said, please don't ever quote me on this. I laughed again. I said, well, you're kidding, right? He said, no, I'm not kidding. I said, but why? He said, you have no idea the scrutiny that we medical doctors are under from Nashville, the Office of Health-Related Boards, I guess it was. He said, if they found out that I had anything positive to say about a chiropractor, there'd be somebody that would come after me and try to cause me some harm. I said, you've got to be kidding. He said, I am not kidding. And so I kept my word to him. I never quoted him as long as he lived. But those are the words of a medical doctor that I had great respect for, and the people in Linden, Tennessee apparently did too, because he was great and well liked there, cared for a lot of people there.
Yeah.
But that was the kind of thing that we were up against. That time frame, that was 1971. Well, the years went by, and I finally decided I needed to do something really meaningful with my life. I'd been working at a CBS affiliate in Memphis by this time, and became thoroughly disillusioned with the news media. But that's another story.
Already?
Yes,
because we didn't get to today.
I'm only 21 years old. But anyway, I've got some great stuff to tell you about that.
Yeah, do.
But I'm glad to talk about the chiropractic part, because this is very personal to me. And so I would urge people to find a good chiropractor and get looked at to see if there's anything holistic that can be done to keep you healthy, maybe take care of some hidden problems that you don't really know you got, or help you get over something, a pain syndrome, headaches or back pain, or gallbladder dysfunction or whatever, because a good chiropractor is a holistic physician. And incidentally, our professional school training meets or exceeds minimum medical school requirements. In fact, we get twice as much anatomy and physiology and twice as much nutrition training. But there's some good medical doctors out there that understand the situation, and they are willing to cooperate with chiropractors these days. There's much less of a persecution of chiropractors, but Beatrice Hagen, Dr. Hagen, who was the president of Logan when I attended, she had been jailed for practicing chiropractic.
Jailed? My goodness.
Yeah, practicing, quote, practicing medicine without a license.
I think we see a similar level of oppression and censorship that happens today. I mean, you know, with the COVID vaccine, whether you love it or hate it, you're kind of obligated to take Fauci's position. Here's Fauci again, or else you're gonna get thrown off the internet. And so I don't think anything's changed in a way.
You said it, but this is amazing. But the position that I hold with the State Executive Committee, the Tennessee Republican Party State Exec Committee, makes the rules about who is allowed on a Republican ballot, who's allowed to run as a Republican, or who is allowed to act as, you know, in behalf in, say, county organizations, stuff like that.
I'm glad you clarified that, because a lot of people don't even know what the State Executive Committee is. Could you maybe just give us a little background on what that committee actually does? Who's on it?
Yes.
What does it do?
Yes. There are districts throughout Tennessee. I think it's 54. I'm in District 16. DeKalb, Lincoln, Coffee, Grundy, Warren, and Franklin counties. But anyway, the thing that we do on the State Executive Committee is make rules that by which the Tennessee Republican Party operates. And there were some abuses that were taking place that made it necessary to try to establish an objective standard about who can call themselves a Republican in terms of running for office as a Republican, or being with the SEC, or a county party.
So you had people trying to run for office as Republicans who maybe had some motives that weren't strictly Republican in nature?
Yeah, people who had been Democrats all their lives who suddenly wanted to make a change because there was a political wind change. All of a sudden, the greatest Republican recruiter of all time, Barack Obama, came along, and suddenly people realized, we have elected a Marxist. What are we going to do? We're going to have to get involved in politics. And a lot of people who really are not attracted to politics, don't even like it, decided, man, we're going to have to get with it. Our country is being taken in a terrible direction. And so I guess that's enough said on that part. But anyway, the State Executive Committee makes the rules, and here's the one that has gotten me in trouble because I supported this rule. In order to run on a Republican ballot, the last 4 Republican primaries, statewide primaries, are at play. You must have voted in at least 3 of those primaries and no Democrat votes. In other words, you have a voting history that demonstrates that you're Republican, not just that you claim to be a Republican, but that you actually are voting in Republican primaries, and that's that. Now, that is not a total safeguard, but it's pretty good. But anyway, there are people who don't like that, who are saying, oh no, we should decide locally. We should be the ones to decide. Well, okay, but you're not going to use an objective standard like this. You're just going to let friends, relatives, political cronies who suddenly see the light and they know they're not going to win if they run on the Democrat ticket. Now they want to come over to us. No, let's get people who are truly Republican in their belief system, who actually believe in the Republican Party platform and want to follow that, who are really Republican, really with
I want to
us.
make sure people get that, because when you're hearing this issue for the first time, someone who's maybe not as involved in party politics could take it to mean it's gatekeeping. This rule is meant to say, hey, if you're a new Republican who really believes the way Republicans do, but because you used to be a Democrat and you've only recently changed your ways, we don't want to have anything to do with you. So it sounds to me like you're not saying that. You're saying you're welcome in, but there's a real danger, correct me if I'm wrong, that there are Democrats who have not changed their convictions in any way whatsoever, but for political reasons they're choosing to run as Republicans.
Exactly.
And that's what you're seeking to avoid.
Exactly. the big tent concept is great. Heck yeah, we want people to come in and join us, vote in the general election for Republicans, because that's the only way this country is going to really make it, I think. But do we want to be sure that people who are running for Republican office truly share our values? Yes, we do.
So why did you face pushback on this? Because I know in a county nearby to here, we had a similar effort go on where they were trying to close their primary, trying to go to a caucus, because this was a real issue.
Yes.
What is, because I'm assuming it's not totally unreasonable, what's the counter argument to this? What's motivating them? Or is it purely cynical?
I think people, some folks are really heavily into control, and they want to be able to make their own rules. That's just not right. That's a recipe for what I call RINO disaster, Republican in name only. People who claim to share the Republican values, but their manner of operation does not. And so this, I don't mean to come in a condescending fashion. I mean, there's some great people out here, and the Democrat Party used to be an honorable party. My grandfather, my dad, and my granddad were Democrats, very, very strong Democrats. But that party has changed. As Kennedy says, he said it's just not the party that it was when my uncle, John F. Kennedy, ran, and my dad was a Democrat. And it's a sort of a sad thing, but the Democrat Party is experiencing an infiltration right now of people with absolute communist, Marxist values. And Karl Marx, he was a horrible human being. I'm telling you, the guy, these are his words. His prime motivation was to, quote, dethrone God. He wanted God out of public life. And this is from, incidentally, if anybody wants to check this out, from a book called The Naked Communist by Cleon Skousen. This guy, Skousen, was an FBI agent around 1950, 55 or so, something like that. And he was credited with being a top authority on communism in those days. And so he explored the life of Karl Marx, and the guy was terrible. And this is the guy that modern day Democrats are going to model themselves after?
Are.
Holy mackerel. I really wish they'd do a rethink on that, because President Trump put it beautifully the other day. He said, this philosophy, communism, has really been around for thousands of years. He said, but the end result is always the same, under a different name maybe, but always the same thing. It's politics built on envy, on jealousy, or covetousness. And it ends in mutual shared suffering. Because what it does, I mean, for heaven's sake, they believe that they have the right because they're morally superior, or they're the injured party, or whatever, that it's okay to confiscate your property, our property. It's take everything we have, and if we protest, we die. That's it. You know, there were women during the Russian Revolution, and these were high-class ladies at dinner parties and stuff that were toasting the Bolsheviks. Yeah, we're really with the Bolsheviks. We believe along with them. A year later, the Bolsheviks were lining them up and their families against firing squad walls and murdering them. Unbelievable behavior. But this is the kind of thing that these guys have in mind for America?
They do.
Uh-huh.
I would have accused you of exaggerating maybe a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But even just in Alabama, where I live, we have politicians who are part of the Democratic Socialists of America, who, by the way, has released a platform nationwide where their whole platform is the abolition of the presidency, the abolition of the Senate, and a whole bunch of other just totally radical ideas. And we have people in Alabama locally running at a grassroots level. This isn't California, this isn't New York, and they're running for local office, like school boards, congressional seats.
Yes.
It's scary how widely they're being embraced. I think it's a real hazard.
Tyler, you helped start a Turning Point USA chapter, University of Alabama, Huntsville. Okay. You talked about the pushback that you got, what do you call it? Bordering on violence, destruction of your property and stuff like that, to anytime you tried to simply entertain a debate, to talk it over. Oh no.
Even just our normal events. We had an event about getting Space Command down to Huntsville, and they were still furious. I think the youth, in large part, particularly on college campuses, have been totally swayed to that way of thinking. And you know talk about the Democratic Party going to socialism. You got Zoran Mamdani. You have AOC, Rashid Tlaib. I don't know that she's a communist exactly, but she's certainly friendly with it. Bernie Sanders too. They're becoming really friendly to it, and I think the Democratic Party is going to face an inflection point where they have to choose between the old guard Democrats and the new younger force that's coming in. Unfortunately, I think the new force is probably going to win, and I certainly hope that the American people on average will just reject them as a punishment.
I hope so.
For that.
I certainly hope so. But I was so impressed. This is a compliment to you. I was so impressed when you spoke at the Charlie Kirk event. You spoke for not much more than 10 minutes, and you were succinct, straight to the point. And one of the things I've not forgotten that you said, I may not quote you exactly right, but it was talking about how people in your position in schools, in colleges and everything, were told certain things that you must accept. And you said, no, we don't have to accept it. I thought, man, it was such a great point. But this is where so many of our youth have been misled. But this guy's name was Allende. This is back to the Skousen book. And no correction. This is from Ted Cruz talking about Allende. Guy in jail for some wrongdoing, but he was a comrade of Castro. And jailed. He continued to be part of the movement, writing letters and suggesting people that we had to join organizations and conquer from within, because people would not accept our ideas openly. No, of course they won't, because their ideas are so stupid. They're so in opposition to common sense. Most human beings don't want to work for nothing. They expect to get some pay, something out of their work. But as Professor Hayek said, socialism is accomplished only at the point of a gun, because people will not work for nothing except at the point of a gun. Well, take that another step, and that's communism. But anyway, the indoctrination of people, it's a natural follow-up from what Cruz was citing Allende for saying. Move into schools, churches, every organization you can think of, join and push these ideas from within. And so this accounts for, and President Reagan's president of the Screen Actors Guild long before he got into politics, mainstream politics. He was approached, he talks about this in his autobiography, of being approached by communists and telling him that he'd better go along with their thinking because that was the new wave, that was what was coming, and he'd better go along with it. Well, in the Screen Actors Guild, but he was really put off by this. He said this attempt to invade Hollywood was real. And you know why? It's because they were very smart. They realized what incredible influence these people, the actors and so on, have. Yeah.
I think McCarthy got way too much criticism. McCarthy was more right than he was wrong, I think.
Afraid so. Yeah. Because, they were, the backlash from McCarthy, well, you're accused of being a communist, you're automatically ruined. Well, we shouldn't ruin people just on the basis of an accusation. But if people have that belief system, maybe they ought to own up to it and accept it. But at any rate, there was great influence in the Hollywood area, Hollywood arena, and Reagan saw it coming. It's still there, unfortunately, and I don't know what we do about it except recognize it and urge people to have a mind of your own. And it breaks my heart when I see somebody I really admire as a good actor, or for that matter, a musician, and they're just so far left politically speaking. And I think some of it is just ignorance and maybe an attempt to do good, like the Democrat Party of old. They did some good things. And my family that I grew up, on my dad's side, mix of Democrat and Republican, but my uncle, who was a minister, Methodist minister, great guy, wonderful man. But he thought the Democrats were great because it was sort of like in their community, if a neighbor's house burned, all the neighbors would come and pitch in to rebuild their house for them. And a spirit of community and sticking together and taking care of each other. A great sentiment, a wonderful thing. But that's not the same as confiscating people's money,
Right.
and then massively misusing that money, as we have seen in Minnesota. And thanks to Nick Shirley, another great guy, who's doing some incredible work exposing the fraud that has, I hate to say it, but has been so much a part of the deep state and Democrat corruption for so long. It's pitiful. I hope and pray that the Democrats will not succumb to communism. I'm hoping and praying that they'll come around and say, wait a minute, this never works. This always fails. Because when you start punishing the people who produce, they disappear. And when those people that produce goods and services and make money and contribute to an economy that has made America the envy of the world in terms of our standard of living, that will all go away. It'll vanish in a very short time.
I hope your prayer's answered. I don't really share your optimism. I've met maybe enough Democrats, at least at the college level, that I know, at least for the younger cohort, they're totally sold on the communism. I know we're getting a little long here, but I do want to ask you, because you had a big role in planning the Charlie Kirk memorial service that happened over in Winchester. And I was there. I was invited to speak there, which was an honor. Really loved it. Do you remember, I just kind of want to go back to what inspired you to do that. Do you remember where you were when you heard that Charlie Kirk had been shot? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I was sitting in my living room, and it came across the Fox News, I guess.
What were your original reactions to that? Were you
Disbelief.
Yeah.
Disbelief. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it, and so I was in denial. No, surely not. Surely, that how the news overstates things. Surely this is just an overstatement or something. Sure, he's okay, because the guy was so good. He was just a great guy. He would typically, as you know, he would finish a discussion with an opponent that he was debating with. I see we're not going to be able to agree, but you know what? I wish you the best in your life. I hope that things will go great for you, and I hope you'll eventually come around to our way of thinking. But in the meantime, please don't do anything that hurts you permanently, in terms of gender modification or anything else that's advocated by the far left. I hope you have a great life, and maybe we can get together at some point philosophically. What a guy. Honestly, Tyler, I don't know if I am able to do that in a debate situation like that, because it's tough, but he was great.
It is. Do you remember whose idea it was originally to have that
Well,
event? How did you get involved with it?
I cannot claim credit for much, honestly, because Roger Vettito was the chairman of the Franklin County Republican Party at that time. Charlie had been murdered. A couple of days went by, and I was just in a terrible state of mind about it. I sat in my living room, and I thought, I'm going to call Roger Vettito. I'm going to see if he likes this idea. Well, I called Roger, and I said, Roger, what would you think about us putting together a tribute to Charlie Kirk? Instant response. I love it. When do you want to do this? And I said, well, I don't know. Let me think about it a day or two, and I'll get back to you. Well, Roger and his friend and my friend Reggie Dotson and Taylor Dotson took it and ran with it. They had the flyers printed in 5 or 6 days. I couldn't believe it. I thought, wow, these people are really going for them. And so I tried to help spread the word, but I really have to give credit to them for taking an idea and going nuclear.
They did an incredible job with it.
It was great.
And the people responded too, because you can plan the best of it in the world, but if there's not an appetite for it, nobody's going to come. But a lot of people did. I recall hearing that there was a little bit of pushback. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, there were some people in our group, I guess, that felt like, oh, he's too controversial. We don't want to do that. Charlie Kirk was too controversial, for heaven's sakes. That's my kind of controversy. This guy was great. He was an absolute gift to the Republican Party, to the conservative side, to the thinking side, the cognitive side. And I'm thinking, these people don't want to participate in a Charlie Kirk tribute? Holy mackerel. But boy, the dam had burst because Roger and Reggie, they took it and ran with it.
Yeah.
But if I can redirect the conversation just a
please
second, because this is something I had on my notes here. One of my heroes growing up was the great Paul Harvey. I think probably some of your older viewers and listeners will remember Paul Harvey. He was a true journalist. He called himself Paul Harvey News and Comment. But Paul Harvey, he quoted me a few times and I was ecstatic.
I bet.
He sort of had my sense of humor, and I guess, or I had his sense of humor. But I wanted to meet him in person because he had quoted a poem when I was 18 years old. I sent him. He ran with it. He put it in his newspaper, syndicated newspaper article. His wife Angel put it in his book, You Said It, Paul Harvey. He used it on his syndicated TV program and his radio program. I never got to hear it. I was heartbroken. People were coming up to me on the street. My God, Paul Harvey, we read your poem. This is, Yeah. Anyway, I was so excited. But 10 years went by, 10 or 11 years went by. I was working for a radio station in Memphis, getting ready to go to chiropractic school. I just finished up my pre-med. I had the opportunity to hear him speak to the Memphis Hospital Association. I went in and got to hear him and got to meet him. And more on that in a minute, but what he said that is so pertinent to our conversation here, this October of 82, he said, to those of you who believe that it's impossible for President Reagan to truly get his message through to you through the filter that we know as our media, he said, I'm sorry to tell you, but it's far worse than you ever dreamed. Public Opinion magazine did a survey, a stealth investigation of the news media. They didn't realize that they were part of this stealth investigation, but this group investigated the media and found that they're liberal beyond all measures. 92% Democrat, liberal on all social issues, but he asked a key question, and this is the one I wanted to make. Who really runs the country? Is it Congress, the Supreme Court, or the media? Not the media, excuse me. Congress, the Supreme Court, or the presidency? I skipped ahead because they said, well, it's the unions, the Congress, and the news media. And they said, well, who should run the thing? Who should be at the top of the chain here on this? These arrogant, autocratic, whatever, said they, the media, should be the ones running America.
Wow.
Yes, this was incredible. But anyway, this was, I don't know how, if you want to research this, but it's Public Opinion magazine from so many years ago. But Paul Harvey outed them on this, and I was stunned. But look, this would explain why the news media has the incredibly corrupt, left-leaning slant that it has. And they were never fair to President Reagan. They have never been fair to President Trump. If anything, they have been absolutely hostile to the guy. They have helped push a narrative that he's a bad guy, done all sorts of bad things. Tyler, President Trump must be the guy with the cleanest record of all, because the only thing that they've been able to do is manufacture stuff against the guy. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's it. That's essentially my note.
Yeah. I'm glad you shared that. And that's incredible, by the way. Paul Harvey, citing your work. That's got to be a really good a good experience.
I hate to admit that my ego is so fragile that I would need validation from something like that. But a few years ago, when he referred to me as the singing chiropractor, he'd heard a little bit of this album I'd put together. More on that if we have time. But yeah. I was stunned. Patients were calling me up saying, "Did you hear what happened with Paul Harvey?" No, what happened? Anyway.
So we haven't touched on that at all. I know you play the saxophone.
Yeah.
And you have a band. Is that what?
Well, you call it? I used to have my own little combo, but
combo. That's the word.
Members moved away, and we got kind of separated. It's very hard to keep a band together. But I play occasionally. I played in Huntsville at the Rocket Center with Randy Taylor and his group, the Party Guys. But anyway, I got to play Boots Randolph's Benny Hill theme, the Yakety Sax, the other day, and actually got a pretty decent recording of it, but amazingly, part of it anyway.
So you have an album, though?
Well, I put together, it was actually in a little studio that a friend of mine had, Terry, but he has since passed away. But it was pretty slick looking. It was a CD, had a good cover and everything. And it so happened that Paul Harvey was going to be in Jackson, Tennessee, and my wife Terry and I went to meet him and talk to him at the university there. And I handed him the book. You said it, Paul Harvey. I said, Mr. Harvey, I'd really appreciate your autograph in this book. And well, of course, I reminded him about the poem that he had read when I was just a kid of 18 and how he reread it about 11 years later. I couldn't believe that it really happened. I actually got a recording of that. But at any rate, he signed it, and I said, I get a feeling you like, we have the same taste in music or similar taste. Here's an album I did. I'll give you this. I'd love to have you listen to it. Well, he stuck it in his coat pocket. It must have been 2 years before he finally got around to putting it on a CD player. Yeah. Because the next thing I know, he's referring to me as Dr. Jerry Anderson, the singing chiropractor. Very good. I couldn't believe it. And so, honestly, if nobody else liked my singing, at least Paul Harvey.
At least he liked it, right?
At least Paul Harvey.
Do you mind if we play that poem maybe
I don't mind at all.
I could tack it. I don't know how well the audio will pick up, but if you send me the audio, I'll play it so the audience can hear it. I feel like it's only fair, after talking so much about the poem, that they get a chance to hear it in the voice of Paul Harvey himself.
That would be great.
Now, our For What It's Worth department yields today to repeat some words, and I don't know why. Words first written by a high school boy, Jerry Anderson, in Huntington, Tennessee. Ha ha, they laughed. He's at it again, the silly fool. Come see the show, come one and all, watch the village idiot racing for a fall. Out in the meadow, the fool ran round, leaping and jumping and flapping his arms, trying to gain speed so as to get off the ground. Please don't laugh, said a little girl. He means no harm. He's trying to fly. He is insane, came the haughty reply. The villagers laughed till the sun was low. They were still laughing when sunset came. Tears filled their eyes, they'd been laughing so. Then suddenly the laughter stopped. Men gaped. Women fainted. The little girl was crying. For out there over the meadow, the fool was no longer running. He was flying. Paul Harvey. Good day.
The man was so gifted, had such a special gift that Sean Hannity has quoted him and has actually played some of his philosophical ranting, I guess, about how if the devil were going to try to take over America, how he would do it. And anyway, mutual shared admiration for Paul Harvey there with Sean Hannity.
Yeah.
But the man was incredible. He had such a style, and there's nobody like him. I was so honored to get those compliments and to actually be quoted by him several times throughout the years. It really meant a lot to me.
That's incredible.
But I'll be delighted to share that with you, of course.
Well, I think we've had a great conversation, and if there was any value in it, I think it's that people get to know you a little better on a deeper level than a social media post or a campaign sign.
Yeah.
So they know who Dr. Jerry Anderson is a little bit, just a brief glimpse. I know we didn't even touch on a lot of stuff, but they know a little bit more about you. And if they're compelled, they could reelect you to the SEC. I think that'd be good to do that.
If they like what they see, I'm genuinely trying to do a good, straight-up job. And we don't want to exclude any good people. But we don't want to be invaded by people who mean to do us harm.
No.
So
the Democrats have had a schism, and we see how destructive it is to them, to our benefit. I don't chagrin at all that the Democrats are having infighting, but we can't have that here. And I appreciate you trying to head that off.
When you've got people like James Carville who are actually advocating crossover voting to infiltrate a Republican election, so to speak, elect a weak candidate for the general election, which they then turn around and beat. That's just not. It's
terrible.
That's kind of underhanded.
We have such a problem, not to get on a tangent, we have such a problem with weak Republicans in Congress. I can probably count on one hand the names of senators and representatives who are doing a tremendous job and are fighting for the cause, so to speak, and who are getting behind Trump's agenda and helping us make progress. The rest of them, they just vote where the wind takes them, and I have nothing positive to write home about them. And it's this phenomenon where people like to elect kind of weak centrists because they appeal to more people, but you really do need strong candidates. Yeah. And the Democrats are going towards the more extreme side, right? In their primaries, they're rewarding the more radical ones. Yeah. And I'm not saying we want to elect radicals exactly, but we cannot keep electing mediocre, do-nothing Republicans who won't accomplish anything for us. We need strong candidates.
Jim Jordan, Ron Johnson, just to name a couple.
Oh yeah.
And there are others. I can't think of too many names right off the top of my head, but Ted Cruz, of course, is great. So there are some good people there, but Professor Thomas Sowell said something that was really disturbing. He said that most people who claim to be public servants, they go to Washington to be public servants, really end up serving themselves. And that's a kind of a cynical take on it. But I'm afraid that, I hope not all the time, but quite a bit of the time that's true. I'm just hoping and praying that they will realize we've got a real gift in President Trump because he thinks outside the box. President Trump is valuable in one sense I think almost anybody can appreciate if they'll think about it. And here's what it is. America has been spent into a nuclear bomb of debt that can kill us as surely as a nuclear bomb if we don't get control of it. Our gross national product is barely enough to cover the interest on the money that this country owes. We got to get a grip on that. Well, there's one way to do that, to save Social Security, Medicare, every social program. Part of it, of course, is correcting the fraud thing that we need to correct, but the other is to produce sustained, positive, powerful, super powerful economic growth by bringing industry back to America, by giving all manner of incentives for people to work, produce, make the American capitalist system really work. And Trump has the incredible insights and abilities, including the flexible use of tariffs, to make that happen and to free the American people and to give the producers the incredible incentive they need. Yes, you're going to get to keep most of your money. Please make the inventions. Yeah. You know, make the new spacecraft, the incredible stuff.
Do you see his deportation and immigration reform efforts, which are kind of his headline, I mean that's what he's known for, as helping with that?
I see it as a start, but let's face it, I'm calling out the Democrats on this. They claim to be so compassionate about the illegals. No, their compassion, if it exists, has nothing to do with it. It's to have voters. They either want those people to vote now illegally, or their presence here to count in a census that enlarges the number of seats in blue states so that they control by that method.
Has any of that reached here? Because obviously we're pretty far from the border, pretty rural conservative area. Can you see evidence in your own locality of H-1B abuse, people coming in from other countries to run gas stations and service jobs, or illegal immigrants? Do you see that here, or is it more distant for you?
I tell you, we have got some immigrants here, people that are new American citizens. They came here the right way.
Naturalized legally?
Yeah, okay. And I frequent one of the markets they have near here. I walked in one day, and I don't know why the subject started, but the guy said, he says to me, I sure hope Trump wins. he's a Trump supporter. And I'm thinking, wow, this is great. But at any rate, there are new American citizens. In fact, my family helped a young Chinese man immigrate. My younger brother, Max, was responsible for helping him come over. Ho Young Sing took the name of Johnny Ho, American citizen. And that young man, you talk about an inspiration. He was a better American citizen than a lot of us native born. The man was an inspiration to me. This kid at age 24 swam the South China Sea to escape mainland China. Most that try don't make it. But I validated this. We can talk again sometime. I'll tell you the whole story. It was incredible.
Oh, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
But he came legally.
He came legally.
And he's a patriotic American who loves his country.
And you know what? He and his wife, something horrible happened to them. They became conservative Republicans.
Oh, the horror.
Yeah, because, he said, oh, no, Democrat, much like China, too much like mainland China. His English was not ever really great, but he got better as the years went by. But
yeah,
he was describing the downward turn in American politics. He was attributing that to the liberal Democrat side.
Right.
Yes.
I think the chances that you would find him in the town square waving a Chinese flag and rioting and cursing out our country and our founders is probably zero. Less than, if possible.
Well, let me tell you where his loyalties lay. Johnny was in school. I asked him about this. I said, you grew up during the Cultural Revolution. Why did you want to come to America? Didn't they tell you it was awful? Oh, yes. Well, when he was just a little boy, before his father passed away, he would sit with his dad, and his dad would show him pictures from a beautiful book, picture book of America. And Ho Young Sing, Johnny Ho, decided, that's a wonderful place. I want to go there. This is wonderful. And his dad talked about what a wonderful place it was. And so I said, well, that's great, but when you grew up and you were in school, didn't they tell you it was bad? He said, oh, yes. And I said, what about the Red Guard? How did this work? He heard me singing Santa Lucia, Mario Lanza's song, Santa Lucia, and he said, oh, you do that very well. And I said, well, thank you. And he said, I used to sing that in choir. Well, what happened? He said, one day, Red Guard come. And his English is still very poor because he'd only been with us about 5 months at the time. But he was able to converse well enough to say this. He said, Red Guard come and say, no more song and poem, foreign song and poem, only song and poem of Chairman Mao. And Johnny says, and song and poem of Chairman Mao, very terrible. I laughed. And he said,
well, when art serves ideology,
he said, but the Red Guard beat up the teacher, no more song and poem from foreign. And anyway, but I said, well, if they told you America was so bad, why did you want to come here? Why did they not convince you? Apparently they did convince some of his family sisters and stuff who had no interest in escaping mainland China. But he said, they tell us all time, America, terrible, terrible place. He said, but I think if America's so terrible, why must they say all time? In other words, why must they repeat it all the time? It backfired.
Right.
Because it cemented in his mind.
They doth protest too much.
You got it.
Yeah.
And so he had to, this was incredible, I'll tell you this much. He had to forage through the woods for 3 days. He gained that ability through some barefoot doctor training that he had, but he also swam every day training for 2 years to make this swim.
Commitment.
Oh God.
But see, what he did took effort, and that's not dissimilar to how the original pioneers who settled America, like Pilgrims or the people who came west, had to work hard to get here. And that filtered out those who were just coming for idle opportunity. It meant you had to be a special kind of person. And yet today, most of the illegal immigrants, the hordes we see coming over by the millions, it's pretty simple. They march over, come across, are given a cell phone, are given hotel lodging, and they just want more. I think people like to say, and this is just my take, you can tell me if you disagree with it or if you have feedback on it, but a lot of Republicans, who maybe are Republicans in name only, will say things like, well, we got to stop the illegal immigration, but we should make immigration of the other time just really easy. We want more of it and more of it all the time. And I personally think that's actually misguided. We want it to be at least a little bit difficult because on the one hand, we don't have room for everyone who wants to come here. It's a sad fact. It's just true. But two, the ones who are going to come here, we need to be really selective about it. And we need to make sure that there's a high barrier of entry so that we are only getting exemplary citizens like your friend or like the original settlers who came here. Now, I would hope it'd be easier than having to swim the South China Sea. I mean, do you have thoughts on that?
You are echoing the words of a very wise man named Teddy Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt. He said that if we allow people into this country that refuse to assimilate, we will lose this country. Just to paraphrase what he said. He is so right. And so we want good people to come into this country. And good people means people that are going to be good citizens, self-supporting, contribute to our society, not take away from it, not immediately be dependent on it or abusive to it. But we have experienced a border invasion thanks to Joe Biden or President Otto Penn, whoever it was.
Right.
We have had a virtual invasion. And the people who are so hateful of ICE, I'm calling them on it. They hate ICE because they hate the idea of losing the illegal voters or the congressional seats, because all they care about is power.
Right.
So I'm calling them hypocrites, I guess. And you know, I'm not perfect either, Tyler. I've made a lot of mistakes and I've been wrong. And you know what? I'm willing to listen to other people, because you know what? They may prove I'm wrong. They may help me evolve into a smarter, more effective person. But you know what? They don't want to debate. I use this little word soundbite. They don't want to debate, they want to assassinate, as they did when it came to Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
That young man was fantastic. And I want to have another tribute to him, by the way, and maybe we can get something going. But
We should.
I certainly want, if you can participate, I'd be absolutely
I'd love to.
desperate to have you participate again. But at any rate, we want all good people to come together. And you know what? The ultimate goal that I have is for Democrats to see the light and say, you know what? Republicans are right on this. Maybe we better join with them, because we don't believe in confiscating people's property and throwing them in jail or murdering them. We don't believe in that. Heck, let's get together on this. But we are seeing an element that is prone to violence, hatred, covetousness. As Ayn Rand put it, the quote, poor man who doesn't want you to lose your nickel because he wants it. He just doesn't want you to have it. A kind of covetous, jealous hatred that, man, that takes people, that takes a society down into, as I guess it was Winston Churchill said, shared misery.
It's true.
The politics of shared misery. But anyway, I have certainly enjoyed this. I know we've run
Yeah.
long. Maybe we ought to get together again
I loved it.
sometime.
We should totally do it again.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for sitting down
Yes,
with me.
sir. Thank you so much.